Hi Heroes, I am Zach, your game master for Young Heroes of Fate. I'm really excited to get started playing because I feel like a lot of us are new to Fate in general. Basics of the game until we are live and on camera. So I thought I would take an opportunity, record this short video. Well, short, we'll see how it goes. Uh, for me to try to explain the basics. One, you can hear from me, the game master, what I'm expecting play to kind of look like, and B, it's an opportunity for me to explain things vocally. I have a background in education, and so this will give me an opportunity to just make sure that I understand what's going on. So the first thing to know about Fate is that it's a lot different than D&D or Pathfinder or any other kind of D20 style games. There are no D20s. In fact, there are no dice with numbers, really. All we're using are what called Fate dice. They are also called Fudge dice because Fate is actually based on an older style game that I believe, I guess, was called Fudge. But basically, it's a d6. On two sides, it's blank. On two sides, there's a minus, and on two sides, there is a plus. Every time that your character wants to do something that is opposed, or that there is some kind of passive or active opposition against you, you're going to be rolling 4 fate dice. And obviously, we're going to be using Fantasy Grounds as our virtual tabletop, and so it'll handle the dice rolling. But you would roll all 4 dice every time we do a dice roll. You're rolling 4 fate dice, and as they show up. So, for instance, I just rolled this blank. Let's say, for instance, I rolled 2 blanks, a positive, or like a plus and a minus. All you add them up to reach a total. In my example, the total is 0. That is your roll, 0. So you can obviously kind of tell that just based on the dice alone, the range of options we have is -4 to +4. The math ends up shaking out that the dice want to be kind of more towards this average, kind of around most rolls you're probably going to see -1, 0, +1. But that's not the end. Your character will have skills and certain ranks in a skill that will allow you to add a modifier to your roll. That part is similar to most role-playing games. Your character is a custom version of a character that you have in your head, and your character is good at things, and they're going to be better at certain things more than another character is, and that is all kind of displayed mainly in skills. Another big point in Fate that is seen on the character sheet that is, I think, pretty unique to Fate is what's called aspects. And if you look on a character sheet, it takes up a big section of the sheet. You have really 2 big ones, one called a high concept and one called a trouble. And these are what makes your characters special. These are what makes your characters unique to themselves and what separates them from other people. But really, the way I like to look at it, especially for our streamed game, is why does the audience care about this specific character? So it might be like an all-powerful belief that your character has. If we were playing like a fantasy setting, a paladin of Sarenrae, paladin of Sarenrae, that's a pretty high concept, and there's a lot of things that come with that concept. Let's try to zoom in on our superhero genre. Let's say let's come up with doom, doom, doom. Well, as I'm drawing a blank, aspects are super, like, they're probably the hardest part of coming up with your character. They're also hard for me as a GM because I end up coming up with a ton for NPCs and stuff anyway. So let's see, get some examples that I can use. This generator is ridiculous. Okay, so let's go with high school, let's say like captain of the football team. I feel like that's a pretty strong aspect, and there are, like, that invokes a certain image of who this person is. And also the great part about, or a very good aspect, they're gonna be kind of twofold. Double-edged is the term used in the book. So they like in the book, the best aspects, they're double-edged, they say more than one thing, and they keep the phrasing simple. Captain of the football team, I think, would be a really good aspect. Double-edged because captain of the football team means that you're gonna have some sort of cachet. Captain gives you some type of leadership and probably will give you access to some resources that aren't available to non-athletes, to not non-captains, to people that aren't as well known as captain of the football team. That's going to come with definitely some positives. What are some negatives that come along with captain of the football team? Well, in, for instance, our story, we imagine that there might be some things going on after school hours that our students are gonna want and need to take care of. A problem for a captain of the football team is that, well, I have practice. Do I pick, like, how do I pick and choose? Do I go on this rescue mission that my friends are going on, or do I go to football practice? Either way, you're kind of forced to make a decision. That's a really great double-edged sword. It says more than one thing. I think that also makes a lot of sense. Captain of the football team, it means, okay, this person is most likely, they're a good leader, they're a good athlete, they are popular, and so they probably have some type of charisma. In popular media, captain of the football team is probably aesthetically attractive, and probably has multiple people kind of coming after them in romantic situations. So it tells us a lot about that character. Keeping the phrasing simple, captain of the football team, that's something we all understand. We all know what that is, and it's not like a full run-on sentence trying to explain this character. Another good one that's actually in the book is Nerdy McNerderson. Another great example for our high school session that, again, almost, in a kind of Breakfast Clubby sense of the world, exact opposite of captain of the football team, but still gives off a certain vibe and aesthetic that viewers and players know who that person, how they're probably going to act, what they're into, potentially what they look like. And I don't want us to fall into tropes if we don't want to fall into tropes. I think portraying a trope is useful and a fun character exercise. I also think that subverting tropes are fun and a good character exercise. Completely up to you. But that's kind of what a good aspect is. And a great aspect, and this is going to be part of kind of like our session 0.5 that I'm imagining will take the first hour of our stream to do. I'd love to come up with some aspects of that create relationships. So whether it's an aspect could be big brother of three. Great aspect. Probably not a high concept unless that is like the central point of your character, that this person is a protector, has to take care of his family, used to having a lot of people around, big house. But so maybe not a high concept, but a great other aspect that tells us a lot about that character, comes with some potential double-edgedness to it. Probably means that they are confident and strong and decisive, but also means that they might be, again, might have responsibilities elsewhere that they have to make certain sacrifices for. So that would be a great aspect that that also creates relationships. So now we know, oh, this character, they have a family that they need to go back to. And part of your character is like, if you feel like that's going to be a big part of your character, let's go ahead and create your families. Like, who are those siblings? What's their names? What are their ages? What are your parents like? Who do you live with? All that kind of stuff will come into play. Potentially, if it doesn't come into play in the actual game, it will help you create a more rounded, fully fleshed out character. So those are aspects, and aspects come directly into play when we're talking about fate points, which is another huge part of playing Fate. Fate are basically ways that we all can influence the game. As the GM, obviously, I influence the game by creating situations and encounters that you, the players, have to go through. But as players, you guys will have a certain amount of agency too. A lot of times, I'm going to ask you what a situation looks like, or who would you go to in this situation, and we'll all around the table come up with that NPC or that situation. So less in we're in Fate, in my Fate games, we're not after a certain level of verisimilitude. I don't remember that word, but the word that means a certain amount of engrossness, in terms of just kind of like falling into the world, and I know everything, and you, the characters, know more than you, the players, are probably going to know. In Fate, it's going to be a lot less world building on my shoulders, and we're going to offload it to the entire table. Makes Fate a ton of fun, makes it really fast, and hopefully it means that you guys are going to be super invested in the world, because it's going to be a world that we create, and it's not just you guys playing in my game. I just happen to be the GM. You guys, we're all doing this together. Fate points are a mechanic in the game that allow you, the players, to heavily influence the game. It allows me to influence you and your characters. So me as a GM, one of the ways that I'm going to be influencing the game is by compelling your character to have to do something based on one of your aspects. So for instance, let's say, like one of the examples in the book is one of the characters has an aspect that they are it's something like they are tempted by shiny objects or something like that. Classic kind of thief street urchin type aspect. So me as the GM, put them in you guys are in a situation. I could say, for instance, John, don't you think that your character would probably really want to try to steal this shiny jewel that's here in the window? And all the other characters, like, we're all going to groan because, but yeah, your character would. So you have an option. You can accept the compel and says, yep, he would. And I, the GM, spend one of my fate points and give it to you. Or you can say, I don't want to accept that compel. You come up with a story reason why your character wouldn't do that thing that your aspect might hint that you would do, then you pay me, the GM, or a fate point. So you have the option, but you get to decide how much do I not want to do that. It's a fun and fast storytelling aspect of Fate that keeps the game moving really quick and keeps it really interesting. I'm not great at compelling aspects. I'm wanting to get better as the game goes on. It might seem frustrating to you, especially if you are coming from different RPG systems where you are used to a basically as much agency as you want, especially if you're used to like sandboxy D&D or Pathfinder style games where the DM just drops you in a world and you decide what you want to do and you can make any decisions you want. Fate doesn't really play out a lot like that most of the time. Most of the time, I'm going to be dropping you in a scenario and it's not going to really be much of a choice. I don't want to say railroady because I always want to make sure that you have different options and choices available to you as characters. But at the end of the day, this game is not going to be super sandboxy. And I want to be clear. You have agency and you have choice, and the choices you make will absolutely impact the storyline. I am not scripting out a 16 episode comic book series that we're all just improving. That's not what's happening. But by using aspects and compels, the entire table is going to be able to tell, hopefully, what is a really fun and entertaining story. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Compels are not a way for me to punish you, the player. This is not a GM versus player type game, and I'm not that type of person, or GM or DM for any games that I run. This is a group effort to create a fun and hopefully entertaining story for our audience. If you are confused by aspects and fate points, there's an entire chapter. I think it is chapter 4, aspects and fate points. The whole chapter is dedicated to defining what aspects are, what good aspects should do, what happens when you get stuck. There's also the option in Fate to leave empty aspects and for you to discover aspects as we go along. Completely okay. So I do think we're going to have to come up with a high concept and a trouble. Basically, who is your character when you cut down to their core, and what is potentially a character flaw or a largely negative thing about them or their overall life situation that plays into their character. High concept, trouble. Definitely need to have those two. At least be thinking about them and have them written in pencil before we start on the 13th. That'll be something that you and I, or we as a group in our Twitter DM group, can talk about if you're struggling with one. But if you're confused about aspects or fate points, go read chapter 4 in the Fate Core book. Hopefully that makes sense. Skills, I feel like, are pretty easy. Skills are almost the same thing as they are in most RPGs. It defines a certain genre or set of things that your character is good at, provides a modifier that goes on top of whatever you roll when you need to do something. Very loose, but I feel like we're gonna just use the standard skill list. And they're in chapter 5, so you can see the default skill list. It will tell you kind of what that skill encompasses. Some skills are more important than others. Things like physique and will actually impact your character sheet in ways more than the skills. So for instance, physique impacts your stress, your physical stress track, and will impacts your mental stress track. So it's worth taking a look and seeing, how do I want to build out my character? Also, Fate is not a game where you can really min-max. because your character's gonna be good at what they're good at. There's not really a way to like optimize that. There's a little bit more of a way to optimize that because we're introducing powers into the equation, but really there is no real min-maxing optimization. Just create the character that's in your head and try to translate that down on paper. You'll see on our character sheet that there are it's kind of a tiered, where instead of it's not really based on things that you roll or against, where like in D&D your athletics is impacted by your strength score or anything like that. Athletics is just your athletics, and there's a predetermined amount of skills that you can have a certain rank in. We start with the best skill you can have. You can have 1+4 skill. That goes all the way down to you can have skills that you don't have any rank in. You can have the option to not assign a skill to a rank before we play. So you can decide, you know what, I don't know if my player is a deceitful, like if they're good at lying or not. I feel like that could be important, but it might not come up as much in our game. So I'm not going to assign that to a rank yet. We get into a situation and you feel like you need to use that skill that you haven't assigned a rank yet. And you can say, GM, this was unassigned. I'm putting deceive in as a rank 2 skill, and I'm going to, try to use my deceive skill to create an advantage. And I say, perfect. That's great. Great use of the blank. I'm not going to impose, there isn't a limit, and I'm not going to set one on how many blank skills you can have, because I think I know you guys as players, you're not going to want to just leave them all blank and use them as they come up. I don't think that's a very smart way of going about it either. That you should know as a player what your character is going to be really good at. Captain of the football team is probably going to have a high rank in athletics, in physique, in probably fight. Nerdy McNerderson is probably going to have a high skill, probably in I would say probably in lore or in crafts. Crafts, in my head, I'd probably rename that to tech. But yeah, crafts will probably be high on a Nerdy McNerderson. Lore would be high. Potentially an investigate or a notice. Would potentially be a strong one. So if you want to know more about the skills, make sure you read chapter 5. It defines all the skills and what you can use for it. Now, honestly, probably the most difficult part of Fate 2, where are we at time-wise? Approaching 25 minutes. Great, Zach. I said this was short. Anyway, there are 4 different actions that you can perform in Fate. But, and I want to pull this up because I think it was really good. Crap. Let me pull it up. So it's there in the same way that D&D has things like the attack action, the dash action, all that stuff that kind of comes in with when you're in combat. It's kind of similar in Fate, where there's 4 different actions that you can do. But I want us to kind of do it in a certain way that serves the fiction and the story that we're telling and is less about the mechanics. So here's what it is. We as the table describe the scene in terms of the actual game, like the in-game fiction of what's happening. You, the player, you determine your character's action. You just say, let's say, you guys are in a car chase and you're not driving, but you have, let's say you're a wizard, like a Doctor Strange type arcane user. You say, I want to cast a spell that moves a car in the path of the other, like the car that's chasing us. And I say, that's great, love it, let's figure this out. I determine the opposition. So this is kind of like a DC in D&D, where I say, okay, you're moving, all three vehicles are moving along at different speeds at different places. I feel like this is going to be pretty difficult. I'm going to make this +4 opposition. I can't remember exactly what the wordage is on what's called like the ladder, like they have like descriptive, like good, great, all that stuff. I don't remember exactly what +4 would be. +4 is great on the ladder. I feel like this is going to be a great opposition to what you want to achieve. Then we all figure out how to apply the rules. So that's when it comes in to those 4 different actions. So it's not like you have to tell me I'm going to use my will, skill, and my spell casting power to create an advantage. You can just tell me what we'll do and we'll all figure out. So the first action that I want to talk about is the create an advantage action. So you know what? We're approaching 26 minutes. Okay. I'm going to stop here because I think I can I think I can explain the rest, like the 4 actions and stuff. I think I can explain in either a different video if you tell me if this is helpful. If it's not helpful, I just won't do this again. And we'll talk about it when we are on stream, or I'll do my best to explain via text in our Twitter DM. But the biggest thing to kind of know about Fate, I'm going to back up my chair, but I don't want to run over my dog. The biggest thing to know about Fate is that everything can be a character. In the same way that you, the player, are creating a character, and that your creator has a sheet with stress track for both physical and mental, you have skills, and you have aspects. Pretty much anything can have any of those parts of a character. A situation, a scene that we're in, can have aspects. So one of the main ways that we're going to go through a Fate game is the characters and the things involved are going to create situational or scene aspects. In the same way that your character might have an aspect of captain of the football team, a scene can have an aspect of rain-slicked highway. Then you, the characters, or the NPCs, can affect things in the game based on that aspect. Almost in the same way that a GM or a player can force a compel on someone because of an aspect. You, a player, can tap into that situational aspect of rain-slicked highway and say, I'm going to use that aspect to get a bonus to my electricity powers. And I say, great. Hope that makes sense. Hopefully that the idea of everything in Fate being a character and being able to have things like aspects, hopefully that makes a little bit easier to try to understand things like the 4 actions. If you would like me to try to walk through the 4 actions, let me know in our group chat, and I can do another video on the 4 actions. But if you haven't yet, try to go through and read chapter 6 of the Fate core book. Venture City. Let's talk about this for a quick second. This is the supplement that we're using. It's called Venture City. It's really great superpowers. That is the only bit that we're using. So really, like, don't worry about anything past page 77. Really. But a quick, easy way is to look at the sample characters and say, like, what do I want to do does it make sense to like, take a look at some of the things? So like if you wanted to be crap, what is his name? Say you wanted to basically be like a fire user, like I'm drawing a blank right now because I'm on camera in front of a mic. The one from Fantastic Four, or from X-Men. In the book, he's the Flamer. If you know, like, hey, like that's kind of the character that I wanted to play. Easy. You kind of got a sample right there. You can pick different. Obviously, like you can pick different aspects. You can, choose different skills and stuff like that. But it kind of gives you an idea of what that, if you were going to build it out, what that would look like. There's one here for like Metalhead, was like a tech-based one that I really like. If I was going to pick, like, create my character, I think I'd do like a almost like an Oracle type from DC Comics, like partially disabled, but maybe can like speak to the internet or something like that. I like to play like guys behind the screen type characters. And then it's worth, looking through all the powers catalog, so you can kind of see. You might not understand all of the verbs, but let's say like let's look at disguise. It's on page 30. Basic disguise. Once you spend time interacting with someone, you can imitate them near perfectly. Gain a +2 bonus to deception to oppose others trying to see through your disguise. That's pretty simple. Like, as we've kind of talked about skills, so you kind of understand. I mean, a +2 to disguise is pretty huge when you consider the level and scheme of how things are gonna go. Then there are enhancements that you can purchase. Basically the way it works is you have what's called a refresh, which is the number of fate points you get at the beginning of every major scene. It's a finite resource. That refresh for us starts at 6. You then can basically spend a refresh to purchase enhancements for your powers, or to purchase additional powers and stuff like that. All this stuff is in the Venture City rulebook. If you are kind of confused and it doesn't make sense, shoot me a DM or ask me in the group chat. If maybe multiple people are confused and don't really know what's going on, then we can all talk about it. I do have in our Google Drive link that is in our group chat. Try to track it down and bookmark it if you need to. I do have a sample character sheet in there that you can take a look at. If you're kind of trying to figure out, like, how do I know what to do? But anyway, hope this made sense. We're now over 33 minutes. Hope this made sense. Let me know if this is helpful. If there's anything that you're confused about that you like have to know before we get started, let me know. But we are going to be doing a session like 0.5 is kind of what I'm calling it in my head, because we're going to walk in with like our world building mostly done, but we're going to do some of our character creation at least on stream for the first however long it takes before we kind of jump into action. We are going to just basically build out your character sheet and things like your powers and stuff before you as a character actually have them. Not really a huge deal. I doubt we're actually going to do any kind of dice rolling before you gain your superpowers. So anyway, hopefully this made sense. Hopefully this is helpful. Honestly, this is my first live stream game, so I don't know if I'm like doing too much. So if I'm doing too much and I just need to chill, you can also let me know that. So hope you all have a great day. I'm going to be online a lot. We've got New Year's Day coming up. I'm off work on New Year's Day, so should be online. I'm plugged in wherever. Feel free to ask me any questions. You can always shoot me a DM on Twitter. I think I had a link to my Discord. If you prefer Discord over Twitter, if you have something to ask me or want to discuss something, you can hit me up on there too. So hope you all have a great day. Talk to you soon. and looking forward to starting this off with you guys.